Welcome back, everybody. Let's get after it.
Do you know that there's a pyramid in Alaska? There's a pyramid and it's underground, and they've been studying it for decades. It's not that far from Valdez, I believe. I would have to check on where it's at, but apparently, yeah. And I know a very important person that from the Pentagon that met with one of the lead defense contractors that were studying it, and they said, we think we finally know what it's doing. It's all turned on. We think it's suppressing consciousness. That's what he said. The legend is that there was an earthquake of sorts, and all the seismographs picked up the waves that come, all the way through everything. And they saw this whole anomaly, like as those shock waves went through the land, there was some kind of structure or something that perturbed, on the receiving end of these waves and so they dug some tunnels, elevator shafts, made a little strip there to land, and they've been underground studying it forever. That's how the legend is. Then the news did a little piece on it, and then all of a sudden all that shit disappeared. The people at the station said, the guys came in and said, never air this again, kind of thing. So but on the deathbed of a couple people that were out there, they said like they were very aware of that. I think in the beginning, if I remember correctly, again, it was like someone that worked for like Bell Labs or like, who was it? It was maybe it was more the precursor to AT&T or something like that. Like, I can't remember all the, I don't want to get it all too fucked up. People kind of hang on my words when I talk about shit like this. But, so the only thing I want to say is, yes, there is a pyramid, and we've been studying it, and I pretty much have said all I know about it. But I got some other theories, but
And we've got a theory that's coming up later on in this video that's about 4 minutes long, the clip, and it shows a theory about what the purpose of the pyramids is potentially. One interesting thing about that clip there, I didn't realize that Tom DeLonge speaks just like I do. If you ever notice all the cuts and stuff in my videos when I'm speaking, it's because there's too many uhs and ums.
That's what I thought it was the first time that I saw this the other day. It's out literally in the middle of nowhere under this big oak. But if you actually take a look down inside, there are stairs down there. So I didn't notice this before last time I was here because I was in a rush and it was a lot darker out, but it looks like these stairs used to go up further, if that makes sense. And what I find really weird is that all the lights, these lights are on. So that tells me that there's still something active here. But then the entrance is so low tech. It's just fucking strange. It just looks like something's going up, but often buried.
I'm going to put the link to this video in the description so that you can click on it and go to it yourself and check out part 2, part 3, part 4, and so on. This dude goes down in this hole, and the stairs just keep going on and on and on. It seems like he's down there walking around for hours, and it's fascinating. But I don't expect everyone to want to sit through a 7-8 part series of this guy exploring this weird underground structure that he found. I'll just put the first part in here, and if you want to check out the rest, you find the link in the description.
Can I blow your mind right now? Okay. We've already been visited by time travelers, and there's evidence of it. Chris is walking out because I already took him down this rabbit hole earlier, and he does not want to do it again. That's okay. Go. Okay. A lot of people think that if we're going to be visited by a time traveler, they're going to come from the future. But what if they came from the past? You ready for this? The Library of Alexandria burnt down almost 2,000 years ago. The Colossus of Rhodes collapsed in an earthquake in 226 BC. So how do we know about them? Right? Let that sink in. How do we know about things that were destroyed in their time? It's one thing for us to dig up an artifact today and observe it and learn about it, right? But the library and the Colossus were destroyed in their time. So the only way for us to know about it is if someone came from the past to tell us about it, right? So then you start to ask yourself, well, how could they have time travel in the past, but we don't have it today, when we are far more advanced? Well, if you had the secret to time travel, you would probably keep it somewhere where a lot of sources of knowledge are stored. And you see where I'm going with this, right? The Library of Alexandria.
Anyone else get the feeling that this guy thinks he's a lot smarter than he is? None of that made a lick of sense. Yeah, that's nonsense. Hold on. I don't even know how this guy's putting two and two together, so to speak, on this theory, because just because something happened in the past and we know about it doesn't prove time travel, and it doesn't prove that time travel existed in the past, but now we don't have it because we lost it, because the technology or the information about the technology was stored somewhere that got ruined. We know about the Library of Alexandria because it was written about. We know about the Colossus of Rhodes because it was written about. We have historical written documentation of these things and what happened to them. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I make a new one just like it every single day. It would be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back tomorrow to join me.
Have you ever thought about how maybe thoughts themselves have intelligence, and that thought comes into you at a specific time because it's time for humanity to evolve to that level, and that thought is helping us to evolve. So the thought is not just nothing. It comes to you for a specific reason, and there's actually evidence of this. Have you heard about how certain people will receive, you can call it a download, but will receive this thought about a specific invention, and then inventions, there are specific times through history where multiple people came up with the same invention at the same time, without knowing each other, all across the world, and they were all trying to file for the patent and shit, all at the same time.
Wow.
And so if you're wondering, how do we evolve, or how do we move into a higher level of consciousness as a human organism, maybe it's through the higher intelligence giving us thoughts to create certain things, to create certain perspectives. And then that is how humanity evolves.
I don't know how much truth there is to this theory. It's interesting. It's fun to think about. But I will say this. I'm a big fan of Tori Amos. For those of you who are familiar with who she is, she's a phenomenal songwriter, amazing vocalist. I saw her in an interview once say that she doesn't feel like a creative person. She doesn't think that she has the capability to write the songs that she has on at will. She feels genuinely like the universe hands her a song whenever it's time for her to have one. I believe I also heard at one point Michael Jackson say something along the lines of, if he wakes up in the middle of the night with an idea in his head, he has to write it down immediately, or the universe may give it to Prince in the morning. To some people, there is something to it.
So the story goes, the Ark of the Covenant, it's lost. Some people say it's in Ethiopia, but there's another story. Supposedly, Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad.
Ali?
No. He went, found the Ark of the Covenant, brought it back to Mecca, and buried it.
Wait, that's ours.
But this is where it gets weird. They were building a new mosque in Mecca in 2015, and they supposedly dug it up without knowing it was there. And as soon as they reached it, there was a giant sandstorm that came blowing in. This crane fell, killed 100 people.
Oh my gosh.
And then all the people around it said that it looked like a plasma explosion shot into the sky.
Oh my gosh.
And then shortly after that, Kirill, who's the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, met with the Pope and supposedly grabbed the Ark of the Covenant, and straight from the port in Saudi Arabia, the Russian Navy ship went straight to Antarctica. But the theory is that the Pope knew where the Ark of the Covenant was, teamed up with the Russian Orthodox Church, took the Ark of the Covenant from Mecca, and placed it in Antarctica.
What?
That's weird.
Weird stuff!
I've actually heard theories that the Ark of the Covenant was radioactive, because if you hear the description of those who touched it and stuff in Scripture, it sounds like they're getting radiation poisoning or something. I'm curious to see if anyone could find out if this event that supposedly took place in 2015, I mean, that's really relatively recent. There's a good chance that some of that there's some video footage of that incident that exists if that really took place. So I might do a little digging and see if I can find some of that stuff.
Can I blow your mind right now? Okay, this is one of my favorite paradoxes. Humans could not have traveled to the moon unless we had already traveled to the moon. Let that sink in. So in order to make that trip, Chris is leaving because I've been talking about paradoxes all week and he's sick of it. Okay, he's got a call. In order to make the trip to the moon, you need to know exactly how much fuel it requires, right? Because you can't afford to bring not enough, or you'll never make the return flight. But you also can't afford to bring too much because of the complexities of space travel, right? Chemistry, physics, all these things behave differently in outer space. So, for us to have made the trip to the moon, we would have already had to have been to the moon in order to know how much fuel it requires. So that's the paradox. And it's actually not the first time this has happened, because, and if you want to go down this rabbit hole with me, when the Europeans crossed the ocean to go to the Americas, and you can look this up, they would need to know exactly how many supplies they need. Well, how could they know that unless they had already made the trip before? And you can take this a step further. If you really want to get crazy, the only way a sailboat can cross the ocean is with wind. Well, how did they know exactly how much wind there would be?
I love how this guy starts every podcast with, "Can I blow your mind?" and then proceeds to say the dumbest shit ever. Has he never heard of math and calculation and guesstimation? And then he goes on to say that we couldn't have made these sea voyages, which we clearly made, unless we had made them before. Yeah, someone took the risk before and guessed at how much time it was going to take, how many supplies they would need, how much food they needed to take, how many men they needed to take, and they went for it, because that's what people do. But I don't believe we've been to the moon, or at least I don't believe that the video footage they've showed us that supposedly proves that we went to the moon is legitimate.
Can I blow your mind right now? Okay, what if everything we know about the moon is wrong? Chris, can you pull up that video? Well, look at this. That's the moon out in broad daylight, on full display. I recorded this video at 4:30 this afternoon, on my way to pick up Chris from school. Right? How is that possible? If it's nighttime in Australia and they're looking up at the moon, how can I be seeing it in broad daylight? The only logical conclusion is the bilunarian model, which suggests that there are two nearly identical moons orbiting the Earth in perfect symmetry. And if you've never heard of it, it sounds pretty radical. I get that. But when you start to think about it, it makes perfect sense. And the people try to deflate this argument by going, well, how come we've never seen them at the same time? Well, they're in perfect symmetry. And for us to not be able to see both at the same time, one has to be on the other side of the Earth, which means that the Earth has to have at least two opposing sides, right? And it can't just be two sides, or else the Earth would be two-dimensional. That's ridiculous. But what if there was a more radical model? We don't know where the Egyptians got their inspiration from, but it's starting to make a little more sense now. And if you really want to go down this rabbit hole with me, which moon did the astronauts visit? We still don't know.
Then explain this. Are both of these supposed moons tidally locked with our planet and have the exact same face on each of them? Because every time I see the moon, it looks identical to the last time I saw it. If there's two of them, then they're identical. That makes no sense. You did not blow my mind. All you did was make it harder for me to think properly.
Transistors are one of the building blocks for all electronics. They're the on and off switch and the amplifier. So scientists at UCLA have developed a new kind of transistor that, instead of controlling the flow of electricity, controls the flow of heat. They're calling it a thermal transistor, and it could have more uses than just keeping computers cool. When regular transistors were first invented.
So since basically the thermoelectric generators are backwards compatible with PC hardware, well, after I figured out what the pyramids were, it led me to this. You basically take the heat and you transist it back into the system using thermoelectric transistors or thermoelectric generators. The pyramids are literally giant transistors. You have your CPU here, which is a giant single It's just a bipolar junction transistor with a radioisotope thermoelectric transistor inside of it, which is the Ark of the Covenant, and it has an open arc. This would be the North Bridge, and this would be the South Bridge processors on the motherboard. So you have your CPU, your North Bridge, and your South Bridge processors. You have your CPU, your North Bridge, and your South Bridge. All of this transistor material is backwards compatible with thermoelectric generators. And the UFO that Bob Lazar talks about used perfect thermoelectric generators. It was a near perfect thermoelectric generator. It takes whatever heat and transits it into the energy, and it doesn't waste anything. Notice thermoelectric generator. This is the path that the ancients took. They took heat to transist it into electricity, whereas we take electricity and it creates heat as a byproduct, and we just try to sweep it out, which is a waste. See, Stonehenge, I guarantee this is a giant, it's just a giant thermoelectric generator. But it's decayed, so, a lot, but it's still got a lot of the crystalline material there. Karnak stones, whatever they are, they emit energy. There's a resonance here, so whatever they are, whatever they were doing, was using solid state physics. And the CPU is millions of transistors on a micro scale. This is just one heterojunction bipolar transistor, or thermoelectric transistor on a large scale. See, the Ark of the Covenant was a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, and it had an open arc, a positive and negative, but the open arc was on the top here where the heat source is. So the open arc itself would help heat it, while the bottom was in the sarcophagus that absorbed the heat. And the manna was radium, which caused people to have radiation sickness, and it glowed. And Aaron's rods were contained in the Ark of the Covenant. We use nuclear rods in our reactors. This would be the King's Chamber with the Ark of the Covenant in there with the open spark, or arc, or spark gap, because it's actually set up like a Tesla coil and a radio, because it's a transmitter and a receiver of energy, but it's also a nuclear power plant. It's also a gas discharge lamp, a thermoelectric generator, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, a transistor. It's all of our things that we've diverged, all combined into one overlaid system. And this P-type N-type material was 369, and there was gold. 3 is lithium ion batteries. We'd use lithium for a P-type. Carbon we use for insulation, and an N-type we would use fluorite or fluorine crystal, because fluorine is the most electronegative element on the periodic table. So the Ark of the Covenant is in the nuclear room here with radium, because it's more nuclear than uranium. It's transisting the the energy into the casing. You have your cold queen's chamber, which is still relatively hot, but here's your hot alpha, your cold queens, beta, and they're coupled together with the transistor material of the casing itself, which is doped properly. This would be analogous to the Grand Gallery, which is the heat exchanger. This whole room here. Actually, steam was actually used here too. It was condensed in the antechamber and then reinflated here. The energy is condensed as nuclear radium, radiate, raw, sun god. And it was condensed, it was inflated through the casing and transmitted to the capstone, which distributed about 1.21 gigawatts of energy, literally. That's no joke. 88 in a capacitor, a thermoelectric capacitor. A nuclear power plant produces 1 gigawatt. So the pyramid uses a giant thermoelectric transistor to create wireless energy, the same kind that we would use, but it uses the heat and transits it and creates electricity. Similar to how we use our nuclear power plants, and we get the same amount of energy as they did, but we use wires and they used wireless. So you can take Peltier modules and put these on your heatsink, and you can use that to absorb and transist that energy back into the system. Of course, you still need your cooler, but you can use a liquid or whatever. The potential difference between the hot and cold is what you want.
You ever listen to someone talk for a few minutes and think, man, I wish I was smarter so I could understand them better? I really like this guy's theory from what I can comprehend of it. He's saying that essentially the pyramids were power generators. I would like to see some more research done on this theory of the purpose of the pyramids.
Planets are not real. It's a shame because what NASA shows us is so beautiful, almost as if it's too good to be true. When we look at religious texts, they talk about how God created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Never is it mentioned anything about other planets. The planets we are taught about today are all named after fallen angels that were worshipped by Romans and Greeks. And what we see when we look at them through telescopes are actually just stars. The way that angels are described in the Bible, the book of Ezekiel, is far different than what we see angels as today. They look something like this. Now, when you pay attention to the structure of what this depiction of an angel looks like, and then look at footage of what stars look like through a telescope, they look insanely similar. So why is NASA lying to us about this? Well, some say that it is all a money-making scheme, because, well, NASA makes billions of dollars from taxpayers' money. But others are saying it's that, and also the fact that they are trying to keep us away from God and knowing the truth about the world we live in.
NASA's definitely lying to us about stuff. I don't know that they're lying about the existence of planets. You know, they're definitely showing us stuff that they've made up on a computer and trying to pass it off as real.
The more advanced the civilization became, the less they put the work into recording that. It was weird. So for instance, there's not a single writing left behind from Atlantis. They didn't do cuneiform writing into stones. They probably had paper and they probably had digital records.
Digital.
The reason I say that is that we've found some really weird artifacts in the Mediterranean over the last 100 years. There was an artifact found off of Greece that has mechanical components in it that don't make sense.
So this is the one Michio Kaku talked about. This was down at the bottom of the Mediterranean.
That's it. Thank you.
Around 1900 or so, there was a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, and divers found an instrument encrusted in coral. It looked like a piece of junk, but when they cleaned it, they realized, no, it's a machine that is 2,000 years old. And then they took x-rays of it, and they realized it's a computer.
Now, I haven't followed Michio Kaku much here recently. It's been probably 5 years since I've even listened to an interview with him, so I don't know if he's gone off the deep end and started talking crazy and diving into pseudoscience. But I've always known him to be very serious, very based in reality whenever he speaks. So for him to claim that we found a computer under the ocean in 1900, before we even had computers, that's pretty fascinating.
India lands on the moon, but is it real?
जी हाँ, आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल.
The India moon landing looks like an Atari video game, and people are, we did it! We did it, guys! We landed on the moon! I have a camera right now, which is showing every part of my body, and can show you almost like the detail of like 4K, but the camera used for the moon landing is like pixels, like Atari or Nintendo. But the camera I'm using has like 4K, can scan my retinas, can tell me my hair color, all kinds of things. But the cameras used for the moon landing are like pixelated Atari graphics. Bing, 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 bing. Like looking at Donkey Kong. Trillions of dollars on our space programs, trillions and trillions of dollars for somebody to dress up in an aluminum foil suit and pretending to be jumping around on the moon, or simulating what it would be like if we were on the moon. Meanwhile, they're in Scottsdale, Arizona, right down the street, simulating what it looks like for a moon landing. But then they film it with Hollywood CGI and Hollyweird and all that situation, and then they broadcast it back to the people that they've landed on the moon, and we sent our little rover onto the moon, and you guys got to watch the camera, so it must be real. So you have to ask questions about everything that you're showed, because it's just a mockery.
What's that argument? You think that NASA would just lie to you? You think that every person there is lying to you? If NASA's lying to you, then that means that everyone who works at NASA has to be in on the lie. Everyone who works at the Indian Space Agency is clearly in on the lie. They all stood up and clapped for what was clearly the worst CGI that's ever been purported to be real to anyone.
We're probably going to be able to talk to animals this year. Yeah, the Earth Species Project is using AI to decode animal language. So they made models of words and their associations of like star to universe and star to like a famous person. And then it makes one of these. The 10,000 most used words in a language get made into a model. The coolest part, I thought, is that they all look almost exactly the same, which ironically looks like a backwards 16th note. So they use the same technique on animals and listen to them when they communicate, and then they make a model, like one of these. It's then matched with the English model, or whatever language you speak, and then translated back to you. Sick. But there's another layer. You can only understand things because of geometry, even words. In cymatics, noise is chaos, pattern is order. An ordered sound creates symmetry in the folds of a wave. And then that pattern means something, like the vowels you see up there. Those individual geometries can then be understood by your brain. You can then form those into words or harmony in music. It's all the same. It's even in your DNA. I just want to talk to my dog, and hopefully if we can find some harmony with AI, we can talk to these guys. A good place to start learning about these geometries would be the book that I wrote. In my opinion, with no bias, it's the best place to start if you like this kind of thing.
This is going to be interesting to see which animals are conscious, aware, self-aware, because yeah, they might be talking, communicating and stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are self-aware and understand even what their presence is. I could also see this backfiring in a big way. This is what they're going to use to do the big push to make us eat bugs, because they're going to say, oh, we can talk to cows now, and they're really sad that we're killing all their relatives and eating them. We can talk to chickens now, and they're self-aware, and they understand that we're eating them for food, and we've got to stop doing that. We're going to have to eat bugs because we can't talk to bugs, and bugs don't have a consciousness or some crap like that. I can see it now. Path we're headed down.
Do you think NPCs are actually real? Like some people don't have souls?
Yes, I 100% believe that. As a matter of fact, to take a Bible term, the 144, I think there's basically 144 million people on Earth with souls, and I think the rest are NPCs. And considering there's 7 billion people on the planet, that tells you a lot. I think the NPCs are here to keep us in line. If you have a great idea, oh no, that shit ain't gonna work, dude. Give it up, man. Sometimes NPCs can be in the same family too.
Yeah, no.
You know what I'm saying? Hands like this, a little bit apart, just a little bit, and then go back, but don't touch them. Further apart, not that fast. It feels like a magnet.
What the fuck?
Hey, hold on. Just keep it like there. I want you people at home to do the same thing. Take your hands and go like this, but don't touch. Don't touch. Close together, you know, like this, a little bit apart. You should feel some kind of energy. You should feel some kind of magnetism. And if you don't, you're an NPC because you don't have a soul. Do you understand that? You do not have a soul if you can't feel it. Come here. Put your hands right here. Do you feel that?
Yeah, that's weird.
This is how stuff works.
If this resonates, some of these NPCs out here trying to fucking feel like they got something pumping in here. They're trying to pretend like they got some souls. And you know what? I'm not gonna say anything negative to an NPC that's trying, because you know it's just like an animal that shows compassion. You gotta be like, okay, man, bravo, you're trying, but you're still the Tin Man. You're still the Tin Maddie.
I have heard the theory that there's a large amount of people, but there's only so many souls to go around, and so you have a lot of empty containers walking around, and that's the NPC argument that I heard. But I don't know. It makes you wonder, because I've definitely seen some people who are just completely off behind the eyes. Just nothing going on upstairs whatsoever. Just walking around on empty. Just walking around on autopilot. It could. There's a lot of different reasons that you would see somebody like that. It could be drug use. It could be a mental disorder. It could be lots of things. It could just be that there's a large number of people out there who are so indoctrinated into this daily grind that they've just shut off emotionally. Because for a lot of people, life just sucks. You know, every day is waking up and doing the same thing every day, and you just become emotionally numb to it and shut off. But I don't really know what I think about the whole NPC thing, though. It's interesting. I've definitely seen some people that I've claimed to be NPCs, because there's a lot of them out there. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed these clips. Don't forget to go back and look at the description if you're interested in seeing the guy that finds the huge underground structure under that oak tree. Aside from that, I would like to say, anyone who has sent me an email recently, I'm very far behind on answering them. I hope to get to them by this weekend. Just give me time. Hang in there with me. I will answer every email. I try to get to as many comments as I can, and I've been getting so many of those lately. It's taken away time for me to get over to my email. So I hope you guys have a great, safe, fantastic day, and I will be back tomorrow with a new video. I hope you come to join me. I will see you tomorrow.